Cool. So for today's agenda, we're going to cover a few topics. First, we're going to give an overview of what's going on out there in campus recruiting. We're going to talk about what a micro-internship is. We're going to go through some actionable strategies that you can apply right now. And that's really important because we recognize where we are in the campus recruiting cycle. Some companies are in the middle of it, some haven't begun, some are wrapping up and already thinking about next year. One of the most exciting things we will cover is some funded programs, so you can see the impact of this firsthand, and through the very generous support of a number of foundations, 100% of the cost will be covered. So again, we'll dig into that and then leave time for Q&A. But as I said, if you see me looking over here, it is because I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat along the way. So let's dive into it. So real quickly, Parker Dewey, by way of background, we are a 10-year-old organization, 100% focused on helping improve college to career transitions. We are focused on plugging into what companies already do, how they're already recruiting, and providing resources to help make it more effective. We work with organizations of all sizes, ranging from one-person startups to nonprofits to government organizations to Fortune 100. And again, really create equitable pathways that complement what companies are doing. So let's talk about what we're hearing from students. College students are saying the campus recruiting process is not working for them. They want to begin exploration during their first or second year, but oftentimes they're hearing from employers there's not the opportunities. They're being told to come to the info session or the career fair, but they're not feeling that it's as engaging as they would like. In addition, we're hearing from students that the current process isn't effectively allowing them to showcase their skills to employers or really understand the roles. And this is why I think 95% of college students have said the most effective way to recruit them is through real work, short-term experiences. It lets them learn about companies, lets them demonstrate skills, and ultimately leads to better hiring outcomes for them and for employers. At the same time, as I'm sure you know, campus recruiting is very, very difficult for employers. Cost per hire continues to increase. It's north of $6,000 per hire, according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and continues to go up. At the same time, it's becoming increasingly difficult to mutually assess fit. Again, it's not just the employer assessing the fit of the candidate, but for helping the candidate understand if it's the right organization and right role for them. The result is first-year turnovers about 45%. This is why employers need a more effective way to engage and assess earlier in the process. What we're going to talk about today is how right now employers struggle to engage students before the career fair, before the info session, before they're on campus. We're going to share how employers want to keep students or prospective candidates engaged after those events. How do we keep them warm? Because we know blasting emails isn't working. We're going to talk about how employers want to evaluate candidates more effectively. Again, getting insights earlier in the process and certainly before the hiring decision. And for those employers that can't be at every campus they would like, how can they continue to reach and engage those prospective candidates? We believe the solution is micro-internships. And as I said, we're going to share the slides. So we'll go through very quickly the high level. Micro-internships are very, very short-term professional projects that are similar to what a new hire or a summer intern would be doing on the job. They're typically 10, 20, 30-hour assignments. They don't require onboarding or training. They don't require access to company data or information or systems. They're very defined to be projects that, again, students can do remote from their dorm room, from the library, as a way to learn about a company, but also to demonstrate their skills. These projects can take place on demand, so they are year-round. They're not just subject to winter break or a faculty member's semester schedule or otherwise. The projects are also applicable across every role, every department, and we'll show some examples in a second. And one thing I always like to highlight is that when students are doing micro-internships, their employees or contractors of Parker Dewey, not your organization for the duration of the project, which means there's no HR burden. And to the extent you want to hire one of these individuals for a summer internship or full-time role, there's no cost. It's not a staffing firm model. So the way I think about micro-internships is not like a summer internship. It's actually more of a recruiting tool, or as one of the college students described it, it's like a job date, if you will, prior to the engagement of a summer internship or the marriage of a full-time role. But as opposed to it being hypothetical, we'll show some very real examples. The first was an organization that was hiring for an entry-level data marketing role. They shared the job description, which you can see on the left. And again, that's just the meat of it. And one of the things we do at Parker Dewey is unpack those job descriptions into very specific micro internships that, again, can be done by a student without onboarding or training or access to information, but also allow employers to very quickly assess the skills of the candidate. So for instance, the competitive campaign analysis. They're able to see not just the technical skills of the student when they're doing that research, but also things like creative thinking or presentation skills. It could be a more technical on a manufacturing floor role. So again, for this organization that was hiring for production operator, which was tied to the robotics and mechatronics roles at the organization, they weren't going to let the student work with a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment, but they were using micro-internships like a training manual development. Now, it's great if that company actually needs an updated training manual, but what they were really looking for was, does the student understand the technical aspects of the role, but also how well can they communicate? Are they turning it in on time? What's their critical thinking, et cetera, et cetera. The last example is an IT role. Again, this organization was looking for a junior developer. Here's some great projects that, by the way, aren't applicable just to the computer science majors, but they're also applicable maybe for the liberal arts student that's been working with AI for 10 years. Again, let them do research on how our organization can use AI. It's great insights for the organization, but it also helps engage that liberal arts student that might be getting missed and capture insights on their skills. Everything I've showed you is experiential recruiting. It's the intersection of employer branding and skills-based hiring. And when we talk about employer branding, it's not what kind of swag you're giving away at the career fair, how well a student knows your name. It's about getting that employer brand in front of the student, helping the student that knows Nike realize there's great roles in AI or data analytics or HR at an organization they may be familiar with. Or maybe your organization's not as well known. It's a B2B manufacturing company or a small or mid-sized business. How do you drive interest from the students? But the other side of it is skills-based hiring. And when we talk about skills-based hiring, it's not about degree versus not degree. It's about getting real insights on the candidate's skills, both the technical skills that may be required for a role, but also those core skills. And that's really built into the entire process. That employers are able to tease out, is the individual a self-starter? Do they have attention to detail? Along the way, they can see insights on communication or coachability. And from the final work product of these micro-internships, things like problem solving or intellectual curiosity or those other job-specific skills. Again, we know how difficult it is to assess these skills from the typical campus recruiting process. This teases it out effectively and early, which I guess ties into how can you leverage this to support your hiring strategy, again, irrespective of where you are in the process, how you can use it before the career fairs to drive interest in candidates, after the visits to keep the students warm and engaged, as a way to get insights on their skills earlier, and as I said, if you can't be on campus. We're going to walk through 4 examples of real organizations that have done this. The first is a leading hospital system. They had 2 key challenges. First, massive competition for allied health roles, think x-ray technician, phlebotomist, et cetera. They were trying to figure out a way to stand out, but also to drive more interest from first and second year students who may not have been thinking about allied health. They were also recognized that they had roles in other departments that students weren't applying to because they had preconceived notions. Think, again, marketing, HR, finance, strategy. So what this organization did was before visiting campus, they posted micro-internships and let the students know, that they're going to be visiting campus, and here's some real projects that you can be working on. And again, some of those may be tied to allied health. Some of them might have been tied to HR, marketing, or business development or finance. What happened was, before setting foot on campus, HCA had a pool of students that was excited to visit the booth or the info session or the table. And again, not just the allied health student, the junior or senior who knew they wanted to work at HCA or in the healthcare space, but also those first and second year students, the student that wasn't as sure about the healthcare industry, or the students pursuing other majors. What the organization found is it also provided a differentiator, not just to get them to the booth, but when the students were there, they were actually talking about these project opportunities. Again, materially different than just rehashing what's on the resume or going through the elevator pitch. They were discussing these real projects. They also had insights up front before they set foot on campus. Students with ties to certain geographic regions where they were looking to recruit, there's certain skill sets. So they were able to focus on those students during the visits. Now, again, this obviously works before campus visits, but works also if you can't be there, as we'll talk about. In the next example, the question was about how do we keep students engaged after the event? This organization was talking about all of the amazing students that would show up to the career fair booth or the info session, or they met in a professor's class, but they were trying to figure out how to keep them engaged. Sometimes it was the first and second year students where they weren't yet offering summer internships, but they were interested. So they wanted to keep them warm. It could have also been the juniors and seniors when they were actively looking to hire for summer interns in full-time roles, but they weren't going to be doing their recruiting for another couple months. Now, in both cases, we know students aren't responding to the generic emails. I'm sure everyone here has struggled with that. How do we get them to open up and click through? And we know they really don't want yet another info session or event. So what this global medical device company did was they took a different approach. They started off by identifying one role that they knew was high volume, was difficult to fill, and had massive turnover. It was in business development. They were also struggling because they were very, very focused on students who were studying mechanical engineering, student athletes, but also students with ties to certain geographies where they had offices, Memphis, Andover, Massachusetts, and I think it was Austin. So the students, when they were visiting the booth, they didn't want to lose them. They wanted to keep them engaged. So what we did was we crafted a micro-internship specifically aligned to the business development role, where a student would take one of the products, do an analysis, and create a 5-page sales presentation deck. Again, really teasing out those core skills, the ability of a student to quickly understand the product and communicate it effectively. Again, done to keep the students engaged, but what it also did was it gave this company some early insights into the skills when the student was doing the project. Again, did they have attention to detail? Were they able to show thoughtful analysis of the various product lines based upon public information? So after the event, the students did the project, and here's what happened. First of all, from a traditional metric perspective, they saw a massive uptick. Again, the email open rates, the click-through, the participation. But beyond those metrics, they found the other metrics were also driving material improvement. They were able to quickly determine who was the right fit. They were able to focus on those candidates. What ultimately happened was in the first class that they tried this for, they had 100% retention of their full-time hires. And that's 2 years later, 100%. Compare that to the 50% turnover of all first-year grads. And it's about 70 or 80% for business development overall. This was 100% retention, including one employee who got an Employee of the Year award. The other thing they shared is hiring managers loved it. In the words of the sales team that ultimately was making the decision about each hire, they didn't have to waste time interviewing the wrong folks. And when they brought someone in, they had confidence it was the right person and they were going to stay and perform. Which is a good segue to our third example. This company had a huge challenge recruiting for the HR team. It had an incredibly strong brand. It was a national fitness chain. What they were finding is they were getting inundated with the application avalanche, primarily of people that wanted to work at the various centers, the various locations, not corporate. So as a result, they had a stack of resumes that was incredibly difficult to go through, and with a volume of candidates that just weren't the right fit anyway. So this organization took a different approach. They actually went to hiring managers and said, tell us about a 10, 15, 20-hour task that you have on your plate, something you don't have time to get done on your own or isn't the best use of your time, an article that needs to be written, a job description that needs to be updated, research that needs to be done. So again, they flipped it on its head. Hiring managers loved it because it was a way to get this on-demand support for these bite-sized projects that would come up, while at the same time it was building this campus recruiting pool for them. And in fact, there's one specific case where that learning and development team at the company had one of these projects. They were looking for someone to help with best practices for new employee onboarding. They wanted to compare and contrast what other companies were doing and tease out things they could implement within their own organization. So they posted the project and selected two different students. One was an HR major with a 3.9 GPA. The other was a liberal arts major, lower GPA, but there was something about the short answer that stood out. Here's what happened. I'm sure you can guess where this is going to go. The student with the 3.9 HR major turned in the work that was at the top. There's some good data in there, but there's also some typos, some grammatical errors, and other things. The student who wasn't the HR major, the liberal arts student, turned in the example that was at the bottom. She demonstrated her ability not just to quickly get up the curve on HR, sort of the technical aspects, but the problem solving and the communication. And one thing that shouldn't be ignored is the empathy. Just look at the deliverable she turned in. She could quickly understand what's going to be most useful to a hiring manager. Fast forward, she ultimately got selected for a summer internship with this company. And a year and a half later, she's still there now as a full-time employee. And in the words of the hiring manager, this is probably not someone they would have even interviewed. The last example is about data. Data to help you guide decisions about who you're going to recruit, what schools you're going to visit, etc. But also data to demonstrate the effectiveness of your program internally. And that is so important right now with so much discussion around early career recruiting. So this was a global Fortune 500 company that had a very small campus recruiting effort. And the team there was trying to not only defend that effort, but actually expand it. And they wanted to expand it in a few ways. First, they were focused on some strategic goals around not just their corporate headquarters in DC, but some of the other locations, Texarkana, Holland, Michigan, Rockford, Illinois. But they were also focused on some strategic initiatives around the community, like gender equity within STEM. So again, like the other examples, we crafted some micro-internships, but what was a little bit different is they focused first on the ERG. They went to members of a specific ERG within the company and said, here's a great opportunity to work with a college student on one of these projects. Members of the ERG loved it because, again, in their words, it wasn't, hey, we need someone like you to come to a panel. Instead, they saw this company was making a real commitment to gender equity within the organization. They were also capturing data to defend the cost of the program. They've allowed us to share the real data of theirs around cost per school, but they've also allowed us to share not the details, but their cost per hire was about 70% less than what they were spending, with incredible retention rate. Now, what was also really interesting about this ERG approach is HR was almost immediately getting interest from the departments within the company, supply chain, marketing, finance, etc., asking to participate. So we knew this, you did this for the ERG, we want to use it more broadly within our department. Can we do it? When does that ever happen? As a result, the program scaled across the company. Again, we're big into metrics. So this is the impact of using this approach. Cost per hire, on average, is about 40 to 80% savings. It's a big range because what companies spend is very, very broad. First year retention is north of 98%. 98%. That's insane compared to, again, nearly 50% turnover. The other thing that we're really proud of is it creates equitable pathways, and it does it authentically. This is a platform for everyone. Students from any college or university or other post-secondary program or recent graduates can participate. What we found is over 80% of the students getting selected for micro-internships come from various backgrounds underrepresented in the workforce. Again, like the prior example, it could tie to gender equity within STEM, could be first generation, Pell eligible, veterans, adult learners, etc. This truly levels the playing field and does so in a way that obviously supports community initiatives, but also helps companies find the best talent. So here's the part of the presentation I'm super excited about. It's called Gigs for Good. This gives you the opportunity to see the impact of this firsthand without any cost. It's not an application. It's not a reimbursement. As I like to joke, I get to be Oprah and give these away. Through the very generous support of a variety of different foundations and schools and other organizations, you can post micro-internships, select students. Students are paid for their work, which again ensures everyone has access. You can see their work and hire at will, and 100% of the cost is covered. There is no catch, there is no commitment, there is no reimbursement. It is like magic. And in addition to getting the individual micro-internships, you also get access to all of the data I showed you, all of the dashboards, all of the insights, all of the benefits tied to, again, whether it's cost savings, time savings, performance, efficiency, any number of those things. So how do you actually do it? Well, we've tried to make it easy. Using the QR code that you can see, and I will copy the link and put it in the chat. Send us a job description. Send us the most challenging job description you have to fill. Again, it could be a PDF, it could be a link, it could be bullet points, it could be for a full-time role or an internship. Like I showed you before, we can mock up examples and show you how a micro-internship can help you. It can help you before you're visiting campus this year. So if you haven't yet been on campus, maybe you've already been there and you're looking to keep students warm. Maybe you're early in the process. You haven't finalized what your plan is for next year, or you're concerned about renegs or any number of things. We can help, and it plugs right into exactly what you're doing. So again, challenge us. We have an entire team that crafts micro-internships from these full-time roles that, again, are engaging for the students to drive interest, but in the same way, also give you insights on their skills. So I'm going to open it up for questions. I see one in the chat about, are micro-internships known to university departments that help with internships? And then how will this specific project differ from what we ask a full-time employee to do? Great question. On the first one, university departments do know about it. So I'm really, really proud of the fact that we're an open platform. We have students from almost 6,000 post-secondary institutions across the country. And again, that includes undergrad, 2-year, 4-year, master's, PhD, boot camp, workforce training programs, et cetera. Every one of those students has proactively come to the platform. We actually don't allow colleges or universities to require it, and students still flock. We have partnerships with almost 1,000 colleges and universities across the US as well. In those cases, to the question that was asked in the chat, there tends to be a little bit more intentionality around it. Sometimes it's with the career services departments. Sometimes it's with specific teams within the school. It could be faculty or others. We collaborate with them to help ensure that students, one, know about the opportunity, even though it's not a requirement, and two, work with them in collaboration with their employers to help their employers get the most out of what they're already doing on campus. And again, I hope I've made that clear that this is not intended to replace the great relationships you have with the school, or going to the career fair, or interviewing on campus, or doing job shadows, or any of the other things. This is a complement. It reinforces. The other thing it does is it gives the schools data about the students to ensure that they're doing their best to prepare the students to be great employees for you upon graduation. The second part of your question was about, can the project be different from what we ask a full-time employee to do? 100%. So there's really a couple of different value propositions to this. Again, the first is certainly it is a recruiting tool. As I showed you, we'll take job descriptions and unpack them so it can be very intentional as a test drive or audition. The second value proposition actually hits the example I gave with the fitness chain, where they went to hiring managers and said, tell us about the task you need to get done. A small project, maybe it aligns to a full-time role, maybe it doesn't. Still professional in nature, still a valuable experience, still useful for the professional. That's wonderful as well. And we've asked college students that. We said, if there's not a full-time role or an internship as the light at the end of the proverbial tunnel, are you still okay if a company posts that project? I've never seen a survey question that had 100% consistency in the response, except for this one. 100% of the students in recent grads said yes. They said it is still a valuable experience. It still helps me build my resume. It still helps me build my network and learn about the company. In fact, one of the students said, gosh, maybe I'll do such a good job, the company will create a role for me. And I sort of chuckled. I love sort of the optimism of young adults, but we've actually seen it happen over and over and over. The company may not have been hiring interns or may not have had a full-time role in that department, but they saw how amazing the student was, both from a technical perspective, but also those other core skills. And we've literally seen companies create full-time roles for college students. What other questions do we have? I'm one of the universities, you have a relationship. I'm not looking to hire a student, but I have many projects I don't have time to get done. Send the job descriptions and project. Yes. Sorry, I'm sort of paraphrasing. Yes, in those cases as well, you can do that. You can certainly send, again, the job descriptions. You can certainly send bullet points. We also, on our website, if you visit it, there's on the top bar, project examples. These are all templatized as some of the best practices, most common projects we've seen. So to the question in the chat, it might be, we need written. We needed to cover XYZ topic. Perfect project. I'm going to the NACE conference next month. I need someone to help me crunch the list, pull details of all of the presenters, including X, Y, and Z. Perfect. I have a PowerPoint presentation I'm trying to update, or I have a massive amount of data I'm looking to create visualizations, or I need to do all of those are amazing experiences. It's funny, we have a term internally. We call them the we shoulds and the I shouldn'ts. The we should go do blank, but there's not enough hours in the day. Or I shouldn't be the one doing it, either because it's not the best use of my time, or I don't have the right skill set. I shouldn't be creating the Power BI data visualization because I don't know how to use Power BI. Those are perfect projects. Again, while they may not be the best use of time or perfect for us as busy professionals, college students are excited to work on them. Again, it lets them demonstrate skills, lets them build their resume, gives them confidence in their skill set. So yes, please send us any of those descriptions or bullet points. And again, if you're looking for ideas, the project examples or project templates we have on the website are a phenomenal place to start. What other questions do we have? I guess I did an okay job, even with the late start because of my Zoom update. Well, I really appreciate everyone taking the time today to join us. Again, thank you so much. My suggestion is, again, challenge us. Use the QR code, use the link in the chat, send us the most difficult job description you have. Send us that role that you know is going to come up next year, or the one you're concerned about a student reneging. Let us know. We're happy to take a crack at it. Again, we've been doing this for almost 10 years. We've kind of sort of seen it all. So it's pretty easy. Oh, another question. Is the relationship with the student based on the product, or do you communicate with them along the way to know them as a person if they are a cultural fit? Renee, I love that question. And sorry, I glossed over it. When you post your micro-internship, the student applies. And this is very intentionally not the one-click to easy apply approach. Again, that's what's created the application avalanche. We put a little bit of friction in the process for the student, not a lot, but a little. Every project has at least one short answer question. Why should we pick you? You can ask other questions. Please share a link to something you've written, or what are your career, whatever you want to ask, you certainly can. Again, short answer questions. You then get to select the student you want. Once you select the student, it is up to you how much or how little you want to engage with them. We have some organizations where they say, do you know what? Here's the project. This is the article I need written. Send me your finished deliverable. It's due in 2 weeks. Okay. Now, the student may still be reaching out to faculty members and alum and others along the way. That's great. Because again, that's the way that professional wanted to engage. More often what we see is the professional will say, let's hop on a quick 15-minute Zoom call or phone call. I want to make sure I'm clear about what I'm expecting and want to answer any questions. Or why don't you send me a draft of your article sort of a week in. Let's make sure it's going the right direction. Again, it is up to you, however much or little you want to engage along the way. Renee, I hope that answered your question. Please let me know if I did not. Awesome. Any other questions? So again, my suggestion is please use the QR code or link, send us a project idea or job description. Think about how this can align to what you're already doing on campus with the students, with the schools. It is an incredible way to reinforce that. And feel free to share it. Again, we see a lot of situations where, again, we're all busy, but gosh, there's someone down the hall that we know really needs help. Let them know that they can use this as a resource for an extra set of hands, or a different team or friend who's had difficulty recruiting for a certain role. Feel free to share this and pass it along. And again, through the very generous support of the Gigs for Good sponsors, it is kind of a no-brainer. It's easier than ever to see the impact. You're providing an incredible, valuable opportunity for these college students and recent grads. You're getting work off your plate, and you might even find your next great hire. So with that, this concludes the webinar. My apologies for the slightly late start. We can all blame Zoom. I'll take all the blame. I'm used to it. On that note, please let me know if you have other questions. Feel free to use the QR code or link. And with that, this concludes the webinar. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Take care.